There we go. But without further ado, let's bring out the legend himself, John Rhys-Davies! But John, first question I have for you, do we have any aspiring actors in the audience by chance? Anybody? One, we got one. First,
we've got more than one. I've seen a lot of twitching arms there. So.
Maybe a little hesitation to go up. Well, the first question for you is, do you remember getting your first SAG voucher? What was that project?
Gosh, I done show them in Japan, and that was quite popular. And at the end of that show, Ed Bercolucci, who was the producer and writer of the show, said, I've got a new pilot for a TV series, and I want you to do it, and I'm not going to pay you any money, but it'll get you into SAG. And I said, do I need to do that? And he said, yes. I said, any other reason? And he said, yes. A, you owe me a big favor, and B, there's one line in it that you'll like. I said, what's the line? And he said, when the loading is finished, bring me his other eye. Yes!
Have you seen the show yet, by the way?
No, I haven't yet. I told you it's wonderful.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Very good.
Nestor Carbell plays your role.
Poor fellow.
He's I know. I would follow your footsteps. I would not want to, sir.
It's always tricky when you reprise somebody else's part, because it is so ingrained in the audience's memory that you never get a fair chance.
It's true. I do have a Lord of the few.
Well, hang on a second. Since you're talking about children, I wish to lament the passing of the great Richard Chamberlain. Victoria's son, and the beautiful Damien Thomas, who plays the interpreter, Father Alito or something like that. I can't remember. And he spent hours just with a genuine Japanese coach, so that he could effortlessly do this translation. He was a marvelous actor, a marvelous man, and we all love Richard, who really showed us what professionalism is. But the saddest story of all, because I may be going to Japan this year. Somebody said that they might take me to Japan, and I'd love to go. I thought I would look up all my old friends. And I remember the very cruel, sinister man who boils an Englishman to death. He was actually Frankie Sakai. He was a comedian, and the loveliest and funniest man you could possibly meet. Alas, he's gone too. But I thought there must be something. Now, only the one, that wonderful young Japanese warrior, who just goes. That's only. He's still alive and still working. But the saddest thing of all, the beautiful Yoko Shimada, who plays Mariko, the first Asian to get a Golden Globe nomination. She was a popular singer in Japan. In the West, everyone couldn't get enough of her because she was so fabulous in that part. Somehow, her life went wrong, and she was admitted into a hospital in Tokyo 2.5 years ago with terminal cancer. Nobody came to visit her, and nobody came to claim the body when she died. And after 2 weeks, they incinerated her, and they cremated her. And some months later, somebody turned up and said, I know where her parents are buried. And presumably he went off and put the ashes on her grave. But how you can go from level of acceptance and recognition and stardom to being completely forgotten. Well, in your thoughts, do not let her be forgotten, because she was marvelous, and they were a marvelous bunch of actors and people who worked with. Anyway, so sorry about that. Back to you.
You're aware of it, so thank you so much for sharing that. One thing I love about doing panels with you is we get such a behind-the-scenes look and insight into stories that we've never heard before. You have some fantastic stories. You're such a great storyteller. One I want to bring up is one that you've told me a couple of times, but I'm not sure if these folks have heard it. I don't know if you have, but can you tell the story about working on Indiana Jones and getting a stomach virus, one would say?
Oh, God, yes. We're shooting in Tunisia at the time of the date harvest. Now, when the dates are being harvested, the flies come out. And when I say the flies come out, they would spray our, we would be in an area like this, and we would break for lunch. There were tables like this, we'd all sit around them, and it was the open air, but they would go around spraying DDT all around, just to keep the flies down. And the moment you sat and the food came on the table, a fly would alight. You brush it away. You put your spoon in, and as you were putting the spoon in the mouth, the fly would alight with a arrive. In every square foot, there were 100 flies. It was terrible. And of course, we had 6,000 extras, and we didn't have that many latrines. And although the Sahara Desert is a large place, when you sat down and you pushed your hand in, anyway, you get the, so it was not unexpected that we did come down with something. I got a bug there. Now, I grew up in Africa. My guts were as strong as anybody's guts. I got this bug, and all I can say is I've never had tunnel vision before. You know, people were talking to me down a tube. You could see the words rolling down. And in order to do a reverse shot, Stephen said, "John, would you mind getting a little bit lower down like that?" And as I did that, in front of 200 people, and I didn't care. I was that bad. My next memory is of being in my bed in the hotel, a bed that I had vomited in and excreted in. I have a temperature of 106, and I think it may have been cholera, actually, or something like that, but by God, I was dying. And the key goes in the door, and in comes our Australian lady doctor. The little flame of light that's let in me, you know, flares up. It's the doctor, I might be saved. Something. And the first thing she says is, "Oh Christ, John, I see you got it too. Can I use your toilet?" You know there's no hope. Anyway, yes, the temperature of 106, and but you know, when you get the right stuff, it goes away pretty quickly. I lost 22 pounds in 2 days.
In 2 days?
In 2 days. I was a big lad in those days, but if you lose 10% of your body mass in that short period of time, you can end up with irreversible kidney failure. I was pretty damn close to it. But I looked in the mirror and thought, good Lord, I'm back to my teenage rugby playing days when I was 16. But it was one of the toughest shoots that I've ever been on, to be honest. Now Stephen, of course, So a director has to be there. And actors have to turn up to work, by the way. And it's one of our great work ethics. Now, Stephen had come expecting to have some problems in Tunisia. And he'd come with 2 hampers full of the best tinned food from Harrods in England. And he ate that. But he sometimes felt guilty about not being down and messing with us in the hotel. And so he would come down and he would order lamb, burnt to a frazzle really. And he would sit there and he would pick at the lamb and play with it and then just put it to one side and then pick it a bit more. Nothing actually entered his mouth, which is probably why he survived so well. But the famous story, of course, is that Harrison has the bug one day, and he comes up and he says, "Stephen, you've got me for 3 hours, no more." Harrison, this scene is a 3-day scene. It's the scene with the man with the scimitar, you know, and the bullwhip. That's going to be, it's been choreographed, it's been studied. It's a 3-day thing with Harrison using the bullwhip for the first time, you know, to defeat this man with the scimitar. And Harrison says, "It's a stupid scene, just take his gun out and shoot him." Light comes on in Stephen's eyes. He says, "Roll camera, action, and cut." 3 pages out of the scene. But there were consequences to that, because right at the end, Stephen said to the guys who did the poster, "Make sure that the Arab is on the poster." Now, the poster guys just saw a little bit of the shoot of the man with the scimitar doing that and that, with an Arab turban on, and they thought, "That's the Arab that we should put on the poster." So they put the Arab on the poster. Now, it was a great stuntman called Teddy Richards. Alas, he died 3 or 4 years ago as well. Everyone's dying. When you get to my age, that happens, really.
Yeah, that is true.
I better check. Would you just check my pulse? And so he ends up on the poster. And every time I bumped into Terry, he would go. So that's the story. Was that the one you wanted?
That was exactly the one I was talking about. Now, from what I read, Salah originally was going to be somebody that's smaller, slimmer, an Egyptian, but you ended up. What did you get to add to Salah besides your physicality?
We were allowed to improvise quite a lot on that first one. And we made up a lot of lines as we went along. There's a wonderful photograph, some of you may have seen, with Karen Allen, and Harrison, and Stephen, and myself. And Stephen's got a typewriter in front of him, and we're all putting our hands out to write the words. It wasn't quite like that, but there was a lot of improvisation and a great creative freedom. And it was one of the most joyous experiences of filmmaking that I'd had. But it was a tough one. It was tough. You know, we all had to look after each other because we were all pretty sick at times. But you turn up. And that's one of the reasons why everyone should work in the film industry for at least a little bit of their time, 6 months at most. Because it teaches you the great stories, the great truths about work, right? When you are young, the young are very conservative, you know. Their imaginations and their sense of loyalties are somewhat constrained and limited. Nobody wants to employ someone who says, when they're told to do something, says, "Well, it can't be done because of this and this." We're not interested in why it can't be done. This is the film industry. Get it done. And if you can't, there are 10,000 people waiting to do the job for you. Life and work is about solving problems, not just pointing them out. And it's an important lesson to learn. The other lesson that we all take is the show goes on. No matter what, the show must go on. I had a friend of mine who was playing Hamlet at Theatre Royal York many years ago. I was playing Claudius, his father. His real father died on Sunday night. We'd known he was ill, but his real father died on Sunday night. On Monday, he was back playing Hamlet. That's what the job entails. No matter what, the show must go on. We should remember that.
You've been a part of a lot of iconic projects that, what's that?
Oh, iconic project.
Yes, you've been a part of iconic projects that I feel as if they've always been plagued, especially first-time projects, that have been plagued with the idea that things can't get made. Another one would be Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. There's so many people.
I was one of the people who said it couldn't be made.
There's a lot of Hollywood executives that believe that it was a story that just couldn't be told on screen. However, Peter Jackson made it happen. Not only did he make it happen, he made it one of the greatest cinematic experiences for fans of all time.
Exactly. Tolkien had a slight tax problem with the Inland Revenue, and he sold the cinematic rights, and I think they were finally put up by Saul-Zaentz for peanuts, really, because Tolkien didn't think it could be made into a film either. There was an attempt at making a film earlier, which was catastrophically bad. And when I got off the part, or asked to be in it, I said, yeah, sure. Never been to New Zealand, I'll spend a month there, have a good time, and I get back into the real world again. When I got off at Gimli, I really didn't want to do it, because it was going to be hours in prosthetics. And my manager then lied to me, and she said, no, John, I said, they'll get it down to about an hour. And I said, you don't know what you're talking about. And by God was I right. But, come on, Peter Jackson, a very gifted young filmmaker who done 4 or 5 rather funny, good little pictures with 4 people in them and shot them in about 6 weeks. Here's the thing, anyone can make a movie with 4 people in it if you've got 6 weeks to shoot it. Anybody. And sadly they do. Lord of the Rings, how the hell do you... There was no tradition of filmmaking in New Zealand. Lord of the Rings has 21 principal characters. They were going to shoot this over 14 months or 16 months, spread over 2 years or something like that, with a 6-month gap in between. I've been on some big shows. I did War and Remembrance. Our leading lady came down with pneumonia, and we lost an entire month out of that. When we did Shogun, it was meant to be 5-month shoot in Japan. We were meant to be 3 weeks in the sea sequences, the storm sequences in Tokyo. We were 7 weeks there. They sent a man over from the studio to cut an hour out of the show. Actually, it's another story, it's a good one too, but not now. You knew that Lord of the Rings couldn't be done. It's got 21 principal characters. It's got every damned special effect that you can imagine. And I said, I don't want to do this. This is going to be a long commitment. And my manager said, I'm sorry, John, but if you're not prepared to do this, I don't think we can continue to represent you, which is a tough one. And then my number 1 son, bless him, who came home from school when he was 11 or something like this, and locked himself in his room for 5 days, only coming down for meals, reading Lord of the Rings. His brother and I tried to read it with his brother, to his brother, and we kept falling asleep. But number one son said, "Dad, you turn this down, I think you're making a huge mistake." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because in every bookshop in the world, there is that much book space devoted to Tolkien. Now, of course, in every bookshop in the world, there is that much book space devoted to Tolkien." So I went, but I knew that there wasn't a chance of this being made, and so I made it. I got there early, and I made it my job to spend a morning and an afternoon in every department, just so that I could confirm my conviction that there wasn't a chance of doing this. And I would have gone to Peter Jackson and said, "I'm sorry, Peter, I've got a very old, sick wife, and I can't really be away this long. I made a mistake. I beg your pardon. We haven't shot anything. We can find someone to replace it." That's what I was intending to do.
Thank you for not.
And in every department, I saw a level of excellence that you would not expect to find except in the great film studios of the world, in Hollywood or London or Rome, and there are others, obviously. In every damn department, there was an eagerness and a willingness to really, all those bits of chain mail, they were cutting up miles and miles of pipe in order to get those little links to make things. I was in the design department, and those architectural prints that they blueprint out on paper. The phone went when I was there, and he said, "Excuse me, John." "Yes?" "Oh, really? Oh, well, that's very interesting." He said, "That was the printer of our blueprints. We've just done 8 kilometers of blueprints so far." And I thought, "Oh, Lord, how am I going to get out of this? Oh, there's always a way. Let's watch Peter Jackson direct." And I went and watched him direct, and he solved every problem so easily. His crew clearly loved him. The actors, he just got wonderful performances out of them. And I thought, okay, can't get out of this one. This is going to be a success. And about 3 weeks in, we did a press conference. And at the press conference, there were a lot of people there, very skeptical about Peter Jackson making this movie. And I got up to say, and I'm so proud of this, I said, "Ladies and gentlemen of the press, revise your expectations upwards. 3 predictions. This first film, is going to be bigger than the new Star Wars, at which Peter Jackson went." Second, this trilogy is going to be one of the most remarkable events in film of the next 10 years. And in 20 years' time, you're going to look back and you're going to say, "This is a masterpiece." And of course, I've got panned him. Actor says Jackson's new film will be bigger than Star Wars. Cut to 18 months later. "John, you know when you said that we'd outgrow Star Wars?" "Yes, Peter?" "Well, we just did today."
Also, the last giant tentpole movie to win an Oscar, which is quite impressive, especially in this modern age of filmmaking. I spoke to Orlando Bloom not terribly long ago, and he told me a story about the two of you in a canoe. And he said you kept trying to tip over the canoe. Is this true?
You see, that's your trouble with the pointy ears. Recollections, the Queen, the late Queen said, may differ. The real story is this. We are all being instructed in canoeing. The dwarf and the elf are in a canoe together. 2 or 3 paddle strokes later, the dwarf and the elf are in the water. The elf, because they're like that, blame the dwarf. We get out, we dry off, we have lunch, and then we reconvene to continue our education in canoes. The elf and one of the hobbits gets into a canoe, and guess what? The canoe tips over on its side again, thus definitively showing that you shouldn't share a canoe with a bloody pointy-eared elf. He said it was my fault, and clearly it's everybody's fault but his. Pointy-eared, sharp-talking devil, just because he's got a pretty face and all that. You can't trust them, you see, you can't trust them. Well, right at the beginning, you can't trust them, by the end you have to, don't you really? All right, yes, the next question.
I know that Andy Serkis is going to be directing a follow-up to Lord of the Rings called The Hunt for Gollum. And if my memory serves me correct, you said you would return if you didn't have to do prosthetics. Now, I got great news for you, because nowadays I think they can put them on in less than an hour. So, can we expect Gimli to return and you reprising the role?
If I am asked to serve, I will consider it and probably say yes.
I've talked to you a handful of times now. We never really get to talk about sliders, but I feel that sliders is so don't be right around with everything out there, universe out there. There's a multiverse, but sliders was really the first show that really handled it on a mass scale. If I read an article saying that you would actually be down for a sliders reboot, and you had an idea for it.
A gentleman came to my table today, and he put on the table his ideas for a couple of sliders shows. It is still alive and active in people's imaginations. The truth was, studios are not very smart, and they didn't realize what they had. What they had was a show that could have been on the air for 10 years. It could have been their Star Trek franchise. But we didn't have the right writers for it. If you're going to write science fiction, it helps to have read some science fiction. It might even help to actually know a little bit about science. Thus, when we were presented with a script where not one, not two, but 3 quasars come into the, or neutron stars, come into the solar system, the main threat appears to be that once every 12 hours as they rotate, a beam of radiation will kill us all and wipe out the planet. I try to explain that a neutron star is so small and so dense that it would be like having a huge star spawned suddenly into the universe. Things would be flying all over the place before it ever got near it. And added to which, a neutron star can turn sometimes at about 20 or 30, spin 20 or 30 times a second. One or two more than that, I think. But, you know, it's... The damn thing is, I got stopped in Westwood once by a man who ran up to me and he said, look, forgive me, I teach physics at UCLA, and we often use episodes of sliders to introduce ourselves to a problem. And he said, I just beg you, it's so hard to get young people interested in maths and physics and science. I beg you, don't make Professor Arturo just a ridiculous figure of fun. Contrast that with the producer who said to me, John, you don't understand. All we want you to do is be the bad scientist in Lost in Space. And I said, if you told me that, I wouldn't have even bothered to come to the job. You know, at its best, science is hugely important. I speak with some passion about this because I am actually a member of the Royal Astronomical Society, and 4 weeks ago, I was at the Goddard laboratories looking in the actual clean room, looking at the assembly of the new Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, which is a huge, wide-field telescope with an extraordinary range. Hubble is still one of our most valuable telescopes. The area of space that the Nancy Grace Roman telescope will cover, in about 69 days, it will take Hubble 82 years to cover. I mean, obviously, it and the James Webb and Hubble together will all be working together. The function of it is probably to make a 3D map of our galaxy. The ultimate project is also perhaps to demonstrate the existence of dark energy or dark matter. According to our current theories, we only perceive 5% of what we think the universe really is. 95% of it is unknown to us. And it is hugely important that man continues to understand the basic questions. So where do we come from? Why? How? How did this happen? And that's the glorious pursuit of the thinking mind of man that has created science. The other thing is we should be looking in space anyway because life on Earth is getting very precarious. And we certainly need to start offloading at least some people. Let me rephrase that. I have to say that somebody came up to me the other day, somebody who couldn't make it happen, said, John, would you like to do a short trip into space? I said, you bet your boots I would. You know, right at the moment, people like me should go into space because it should demonstrate that space is for everybody, not just super fit, jet fighter pilots, you know, Top Gun people, astronauts. I think in 15 years' time, when an actor like me says, look, I might go into space, no one will give a damn because everybody will be going into space who wants to. And that basic confidence that, you know, space is a part of the territory that we will occupy. And I do hope that we can colonize Mars. I do hope that we will find ways of mining those incredibly rich satellites that go around. I have a friend of mine, Chris Stott, who's married, of course, to Nicole Stott, a very accomplished astronaut herself. And he wants to put data banks on the moon. And I was at Canaveral the other day watching the launch of one of the Artemis probes. And he got enough data on the journey there to be able to satisfy his investors that it was possible and doable. And I think he's already ordered and is hoping to put up four satellites around the moon initially. But ultimately, he wants to store data on the moon. And it's that sort of commercially driven expansion of human intellectual and scientific and engineering development that we must encourage. Got a little bit off from sliders, didn't we? Anyway.
Well, back to sliders for a second. Obviously, you clearly have a lot of knowledge in science, way more than I do. Would you ever want to be creatively involved behind the scenes as a writer or producer on that show?
On that show, yes.
If they rebooted Sliders.
They should reboot.
Yeah, they should.
It's still possible.
It's on screen on Peacock now.
We're going to, I'm trying to organize getting the 4 original Sliders to a show in Salt Lake City in September. For some reason, we can never seem to communicate directly with each other. But we are slowly getting there. We better be, because I promised that we will be there. Did you see the fear in my eyes? Moving actors from A to B is like herding cats. Yes, and it is so simple. We would pick them up again, and there's some obvious ways of doing that. The way I would do it, I would take the 4 of us and get us back together, and then we would develop some more opportunities to take different people with us. And you test them by putting them in 2 or 3 good episodes. And if they start to develop a following, an audience, then you put a little tip beside them, and you do that for a bit, and you find that you've got actually another 3 or 4 really talented group of potential sliders that the audience wants. And I would certainly do a season or 2. I'm 81, for God's sake. I haven't got too many decades left. But then I would drop out, and Jerry would essentially, by now Jerry becomes the Arturo figure, doesn't he? And the others would pick their time to drop out. And we would leave Jerry with a new bunch of people, a new set of stories. And you could do that for 5, 6, maybe 8 seasons. And at the end of it, that's where you rest it. And in 20 years' time, you come back, and those new people now are, the inheritors for the next generation of the series. It's so easy that you would have thought that. You've got to understand, studios are not run by people really who. No, I'm not going to be unkind, but I suppose the great thing about the film industry is it finds work for them. Yes, all right, well, my shop there, haven't I?
Sean, you want to work in this industry again, man? Come on.
Yes, indeed.
But that's great if we know that ends up being what the reboot/continuation is. You know where the idea came from. You got it here.
Oh, come on, yes, but I mean, it's so obvious. It's been obvious for years. One of the great missed opportunities of my time, and it was partly my fault because I'm accustomed to working with writers who are original or do their best to be original, or take an old theme and look at it in a new way. I'm not accustomed to be working with writers. When I go into the writer's room, there they are, clustered around, watching the new DVD of Species, saying, we can take that a little bit there, we can use that a little bit, John, why don't you come out and have dinner with us? Because I don't have dinner with thieves. We did the Twister episode, right? But ours was different, you see. Your ordinary standard Twister on Earth goes from small at the bottom to big at the top, right? Ours went the other way around, which shows it's quite different. Now, can anyone actually think about the physics of that? Because that would be quite interesting. Must be high pressure on the ground normally, and low pressure up there. Oh, clearly it's high pressure up there and low pressure on the ground. Anyway, don't worry about it. Yes, but I didn't handle it well. And but you could just see every week, the ideas becoming dumber and dumber. And getting fired from a show like that, you have no idea how hard it is. Getting fired from a Hollywood show is, because they're all going, why does he want to go? Does he know something the show's going to be cancelled? Or has he got something better to do? Hang on, don't let him go, don't let him go. And finally, the great thing when you've been rude enough, and by God I was rude. John, you don't understand that it's very hard to come up with ideas for a show like this. You can go anywhere in space and anywhere in time, and you find it hard to come up with ideas. What the rude word are you doing in show business? Anyway, and then you get taken to one side, with some security people standing by. John, I'm afraid we're going to have to let you go. What? We're going to have to let you go. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I was about to get on the plane, and I got shown the first idea for the Cro-Mags. And I wrote a lovely little note saying, at last, when it was safe to say that there was no intelligence in the Sliders universe, somebody has come up with an original idea. Of course, knowing this show, it will be beaten to death, but I wish it well anyway. And of course, it was beaten to death. It went on and on. But yes, you detect this sudden irritation in this rodomontade of mine here that we could have done so much better. And that's the damn old thing, isn't it? All right. Okay, enough.
Well, that's a great story. I'm going to try to give you something as quick as I can, but one thing I've learned, at least from today, is that great directors are great problem solvers. You've worked with Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson, two of the greatest directors of all time. Can you talk about working with them, what they had in common, and what their contrast?
Well, I often get asked, who's the better one? It's like, who is the greater poet? Homer or Shakespeare? Or you can't really compare the two. I think that Steven Spielberg is the greatest teller of a story through a lens that I've ever known, or ever seen, or ever heard about. He's one of the giants of all time. Peter's achievement is quite extraordinary because he created an entire film industry from nothing. He had a vision of doing a film that nobody thought could be done, and managed to persuade people to let him have a chance to do it. He is a marvelous people director. He's a marvelous person. And I've never worked on a show with such a complete assembly of keen, talented people, without any sort of, without any of the things that get in the way of filmmaking. I love them both. But there are younger directors coming along as well. I did a horror picture the other day. Oh, yes, it's been shown. Look, they finished it 5 days, 6 days ago now. The promo is already being shown at Cannes. I was hoping that I could get it here, but I haven't got the approval yet, so I can't do it. A young director called Howard Ford. I worked with him a couple of times. That man can make a movie out of the smell of an oily rag, as really is in terms of budget. Good Lord, if somebody gave him $1 million or $5 million to do, he would make a masterpiece. But there are lots of young directors today who move quickly, who can tell a story quickly, and the next generation of filmmakers is going to be very good. The only problem with the next generation of filmmakers is, how is the audience going to see it? I mean, are we all going to sit at home and wait for our next Netflix thing to come up? Are cinemas really dead? I hope not. And Snoop Dogg, that very astute businessman, pointed out the other day that when he did a CD and he knew that it was going to sell, you know, they'd ordered 500,000 copies and his bit of money was $5 per CD. He said, I know what I'm expecting to earn. These days, it goes on streaming. How do I know? How does anybody know what's really going on there? And streaming is killing film. It's closing cinemas. And that's what worries me about young filmmakers. The other thing that worries me is that AI is really catching up on us. This little horror picture I called The Bone Keeper. There was some CGI with the faces of some of the actors in it. That when I saw it, I thought, gosh, that was really good filming. How did you do that? It was so good. It convinced me they were real. And this is the worst recension of CGI that we will ever have. The field is developing so quickly. And of course, the studios are aware of this. I got offered a chance to do a little cartoon the other day. The actual contract was actually longer than the script. It was a small cartoon. And it came from the offices of demagogues. And there were pages of what I must not do to offend people on sets, you know, sexual harassment, rude jokes, all the old things that we always get away with happening when we did make movies. And you know, pages of that. And just 2 little paragraphs, separated widely. One is that the studio will own all the studio recording of you in the studio, the actual script itself, and any interview material that you do afterwards, in perpetuity, and that is included in the theme. And I say, fair enough. And the other bit, Perglon said, the studio asserts the right to use all the material in any way, without further payment, in any manner or with any technology yet to be invented. In other words, they could take my voice, for instance, and use that for other things, or even create a John Rhys-Davies sort of voice, and then put potential Brad Pitt in there, and voila, you can then copyright the character. You can do the movements. I and I wrote, no producer should ever put out a contract like this. No actor should ever accept it. And no lawyer should ever write it. Because creative people are the lowest fruit on the tree that AI will be picking. But not much further up the tree than other lawyers as well. Fortunately, when I was in Washington, I met up with a remarkable AI lawyer who's very well published. There's about 16 or 17 legal articles published. And I told her about this, and she said, John, you should have done it. I said, why? She said, because we are going to make sure that clauses like that are not acceptable in law. This is what we're going to do. We're going to say what creative people want and want to limit artificial intelligence for. And that's a refreshing view from a lawyer. And that may give us a chance.
I hope so was oriented, and I also never expected you to mention Snoop Dogg. But here we are. Look, thank you so much for your time. I could talk to you about the state of the film industry all day long, because it's also affected my job to a screen rant, the whole thing. So I totally get it. But look, you guys who have questions for John, meet him at his booth. He will be signing to the bench closes. I believe you're here all 3 days.
It would appear so, yes.
Here, so meet John, ask your questions.